It's time for Cutting Edge Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnet Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here with my co-host.
Here with Barnet Bain. It's very good to be here this morning. It's good to be here any morning. I always love being here. I just love this show.
Yeah, it's fun. Hey, listen, we were having a conversation this morning at coffee, and I want to bring up our audience up to speed because I thought there was a part of that was so perfect. We were talking about your new film, Milton's Secret, the book, of course, written by Eckhart Tolle, but the script written by you. And you were workshopping a couple of the scenes. And what came up in this conversation I think is so brilliant is you were looking for something. And what you said to me is the actors couldn't hold the energy that you were looking for in the scene. And what kept leaking out were these little behaviors, these kind of quirks or tics, or they would laugh in a sort of inappropriate way. And I thought that was really interesting, Barnet, because it speaks to where when we can't hold something in our bodies, that we have a concept of something we're going for, but our bodies can't hold it. And what happens is we top out, and there's this leaking process, right? This kind of way in which it comes out. There's parts of us that can't hold it, and that's expressed in some way.
That's true. It's really clear from doing that kind of work that we have habituated patterns, and we may want to change those habits, and we may even want to change them in the context of a performance with an actor, let alone in real life. We become aware of things and we want to change them. But there's more to it than just powering through these things, because our bodies, which are living maps of the subconscious, our bodies don't have the capacity. They have been trained at a particular level of capacity. We don't have the nervous systems to hold that much energy, that much energy motion, and it shows up as resistance in all kinds of ways. And you see it in a performance, because like a spark plug that wants to discharge, you see in a performance when there's more emotion than the rheostat can handle, it shows up in tics and in shrugs and in laughter or in sighs and in all kinds of behavior. And you say to the actor, this is where your performance is. Your performance is in hold the discomfort, hold the awkwardness of what is going on feeling wise, and let it play through your body, but breathe into it, be large enough to hold it. That's where the gift of your performance is. This is where you're communicating a role. So as I'm looking at this and dealing with it in real time, I'm thinking, of course, to myself, wow, I live through this personally every day. Is Absolutely. My own body a big enough container to hold my vision, to hold my dreaming, to hold the expectations, to hold the shifts in my perception that are not yet reinforced by the outside world? Do I have the capacity to turn on uncommon senses, to dial in a new menu in addition to sight and sound and smell? Can I dial in new kinds of somatic senses? Can I tune into the grand movements of things that are in alignment with a vision, that are in alignment with possible futures that I can become intimate with? So there's a whole bunch of stuff here.
This is a huge conversation. This is so powerful.
And we probably want to have somebody in here that could speak to some of these points.
Let's do that. Let's bring them straight in.
No, thank goodness that we have with us today our very special guest. Dr. Joe Dispenza is here with us. Joe has lectured in 24 countries on 6 continents. It says here, which is more continents than you and I have lectured on.
Just a couple more.
He's a best-selling author and a teacher. His new book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, How to Lose Your Mind and Create a New One.
Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. What a fantastic title. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Thanks, guys. I'm happy to be with you.
Oh, we are really, really pleased to have you with us. So you must have something. I know you have you have plenty to stir into this conversation. What do you think of this of how to build a relationship between between the new mind that we're looking to replace, how to lose your mind and create a new one, and then how do you create a vessel that works in alignment, a body that is aligned to the capacities of your new mind?
That's a fabulous question, because we're all living and acting on a daily basis in our lives, and we're always responding to different conditions in our world that determine a certain aspect of our personality that's either learned through experience or genetically signaled. But the bottom line is that thoughts are the language of the brain, and feelings are the language of the body. And the way you think and the way you feel creates what I call a state of being. So if you think an insecure thought, that thought is going to turn on a set of circuits in your brain in a very specific sequence, pattern, and combination, and produce a level of mind that signals another part of the brain to make a chemical for you to feel exactly the way you were just thinking. You're going to begin to feel insecure. The moment you feel insecure, those feelings are going to drive more insecure thoughts, and this cycle of thinking and feeling over time creates what we call a state of being. And a state of being is when mind and body are working together, when our thoughts and feelings are aligned to a destiny. And then you can say, I am insecure. Now, the problem is that we do this so much that we condition the body, and the body is the servant to the mind is the master, the body is the animal. We condition the body to be the mind. And the moment the body becomes the mind, that's called a habit. So now the body begins to memorize that state better than the conscious mind. 95% of who we are by the time we're 35 years old, the set of memorized behaviors and emotional reactions, beliefs, perceptions, attitudes, in which the body's been conditioned to know as well as the mind, or the body knows better than the brain. So you may not be able to consciously remember a phone number one time in your life, but you can walk over to the receiver and pick up the receiver and look at the keypad, and your fingers will dial the number. You couldn't consciously remember it, but the body knew it so well because it practiced it so many times, it knows better than the brain. Now, that's 95% of who we are, those kind of unconscious programs. So,
kind of a default setting. So
it is absolutely that. And when we try to change that, we're using 5% of our conscious mind to go against 95% of what we've really memorized.
And that's when you have this topping out experience that Barnett's talking about, where the actors may have an intention to hold a certain amount of discomfort or to hold a certain amount of intimacy or connection or something, and their bodies just can't handle it. Topping out. There's this kind of, I use the expression, leaking out of energy, if you will, unconsciously, and we do that all in our lives. We hit up against a certain threshold of where our boundaries are. Our learned boundaries, or our practiced boundaries, our patterning, perhaps, and beyond that, we can't really go because we're not wired that way.
Sure, and that's what we call incoherence. What happens is that the body has been trained to such a degree that when you try to break that chemical continuity, that state of being, of thinking and feeling, the body begins to send messages back to the brain and saying, boy, I'm really discomfort. This is really uncomfortable. I feel out of balance. So the body's doing everything it can to return back to its memorized state. And what happens is you leak out, or you top out, or your body begins to win and you freeze, or you have a weakened response, or your intentions don't match your behaviors, or behaviors don't match your intentions.
And this is a huge obstacle to change, because people say they want to change, and they want to do it by creating some affirmations and so forth and so on, which is great. I mean, I wouldn't diminish that as a starting place, but more often than not, it only takes them so far before they're back into those pattern responses.
Well, think about this. Someone has an experience in their life, or a series of experiences in their life, that produce an emotional response. Emotions are the end product of experience. And they feel angry or guilty or unworthy. Now, when you react to something in your life, there's a refractory period of chemicals that are created from your reaction. And if you don't know how to control your emotional reaction, and you allow that emotion to run for hours or days, that's called a mood. You say to someone, well, what's wrong with you? I'm in a mood. Well, why are you in a mood? Well, this thing happened to me 5 days ago. and I'm living by the same emotional reaction.
Or 5 years ago.
Yeah, and if it goes on for weeks or months, that's called a temperament. Why does he have such an angry temperament? Oh, this thing happened to me 9 months ago.
So it becomes an attunement. It's almost like constantly playing a middle C on a keyboard, and eventually we begin to respond and have a relationship to the qualities of that note, and we begin to draw to ourselves experiences that are in a harmonic with that note, and it becomes as you said, a temperament. It becomes a quality, a state quality that underlines almost the function that comes before the form. There's a quality to every experience that has this middle C to it.
And even if we want to play a D, but we keep hitting the same note,
keep hitting
it's
the
not
same
going
note,
anywhere.
you're not going to lift.
Yeah.
That's right, because if it lasts for years on end, that becomes a personality trait. And here's the problem. If we memorize emotions that drive our thoughts, and emotions are the record of the past, then we're literally in the past, and we can't create or change and move into a new future holding on to the emotions of the past. And the body's the unconscious mind. It doesn't know the difference between an actual experience in your life that produces an emotion that you fabricate or have memorized just by thought alone. So the body, it's the same. So the body gets stuck in the past, and this is where the trouble happens, because a person can think positively with their 5% of their conscious mind, but they've memorized negativity for the last 25 years. Or they're going to pray for a new life, but they're going to feel guilty. That's
so when
mind
you
and body
use
and
the word
opposition.
memorize, Joe, when you're referring to memorize, when I'm reading into it, correct me if I'm left or right of this, is not necessarily an active process of choosing to integrate this information, but more often than not, making it a part of your memory by simply allowing ourselves to be programmed by the hand-me-down experiences of others.
Exactly. So then what happens is we search for the familiar.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're, as you said, hitting a certain note, at least you can predict how you're going to feel tomorrow if you're going to suffer. God forbid you couldn't predict the next feeling, because God forbid you couldn't predict the next feeling, then you'd be in the unknown, and it's much more safe to predict your guilt or your suffering, because at least that reaffirms an identity.
So there's an addiction even to the suffering.
Oh, there's absolutely. So we create the conditions in our life to reaffirm the addiction, so we can remember who we think we are as a somebody.
It's brilliant.
Bad relationship, the bad job, the poor circumstances. You wouldn't give that up, because what would you feel then?
So we always get what we want. We're not always getting what we say we want, but we're always getting what we want.
Well, we're always perceiving reality through the lens of the emotions that we've memorized and how the brain is wired in its circuitry. So you'll always pick out the things that reaffirm that, because that's what you're looking for, because neurologically and chemically, that's the substrate of who you're being.
All right, well, let's start talking then about moving out of this paradigm. And
I have a question first.
Oh, go ahead.
Before we move out of the paradigm,
Okay.
I have a question about perceiving the paradigm. So, Joe, there's so much around the perception conversation that we hear the glasses are half empty, half full, and we have tossed this back and forth on this show for quite some time now. There are those that we think it may be developmental. There are those that have it's a function of how you perceive it, and then there are those who also hold that you are not only perceiving the glass half empty or half full, but you are also creating the glass, and that it is a cognitively developmental stage. These are developmental stages as to how and when we begin to shift our relationship with the outside world from being reactive to responsive to creative to co-creative.
Well, we need a bottle of wine in 2 hours, but I'll take a stab at it.
Oh,
We can pull up the bottle of wine. We can
work that
schedule the
out.
2 hours.
That's right. Well, let's start with a few minutes, and then we'll see where we land from there.
Well, look, if you take a group of people that are clinically depressed,
Yeah.
and you show them equal slides of a wedding scene and a funeral scene,
Mm.
and you call them back to the lab the next day and you ask them, which were there more slides of, the wedding scene or the funeral scene? They will all say there were more scenes for a funeral, because they're perceiving the reality through the emotion that they've experienced. So they're looking for the events through the lens of that emotion, through the lens of the past.
Mm-hmm.
So then, in terms of their reaction to the environment, they're actually responding in the way that's the most familiar. Now, they will create the conditions in their life, because we are reality-producing machines, to reaffirm the addiction, because how you think and how you feel is how you create reality. So
Right.
It's
Brilliant.
great. So it's both ends, two mints in one.
Right. So then and by very definition, that's karma. There's nothing complicated about karma. We're not punished for our sins. We're punished by our sins. If you're thinking and feeling the same way and your life isn't changing, you're living the same life every day, and that goes on into perpetuity, right? So here's the problem. It usually takes crisis, disease, trauma, diagnosis, loss, to finally get about the business of change. You've got to reach such a low point that you can't go on business as usual. So
We unfortunately cannot go on business as usual because we have to take
commercial
care of a
break.
little business. We're going to come right back into this conversation right where we are putting a pin in it after these words from our good supporters.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here with Barnet Bain and our distinguished guest, Dr. Joe Dispenza. Barnet, when we left for break, we were talking a little bit about something that grabbed your attention, some
It
language.
sure did. I perked up all 7 ears. Perked up. Joe, you began to, well, you were a little farther beyond that, so I will thread it back to the sexy high concept, which is we are not punished for our sins. We're punished by our sins.
yeah, people always get tied up in this concept of karma, and karma is, there's no white guy with a beard sitting up in heaven throwing lightning bolts down at you because you did bad things. That's an old model of reality. The new model of reality says that you're at cause in your life. So if you're thinking the same thoughts every single day, and by the way, you think 60 to 70,000 thoughts in one day, out of those 70,000 thoughts or 60,000 thoughts, 90% of those thoughts are the same thoughts as the day before.
Right.
Now, if you believe that your thoughts have anything to do with your destiny, then it makes clear sense that the same thoughts are going to lead to the same choices. The same choices are going to lead to the same behaviors. The same behaviors are going to create the same experiences, and the same experiences are going to produce the same emotions. And those same emotions are going to reaffirm the identity that inspire the same thoughts, and we call that a personality. So we could say then, your personality creates your personal reality. That's it. And your personality is made of how you think, how you act, and how you feel. So then, if you wanted to create a new personal reality, a new life, then on a fundamental level, you would have to begin to examine the thoughts that you're thinking, become conscious of those unconscious thoughts, begin to notice and become aware of those unconscious behaviors or habits, and begin to pay attention to the emotions that you've memorized that keep you connected to the past, and begin to select and put energy behind new thoughts, new behaviors, and new emotions. And most people try to create a new personal reality as the same personality, and it doesn't work. We literally have to become somebody else.
So I love this, the idea that I create my own reality, but it begs the question, who's the I? And if the I remains the same, good luck.
It's usually the temperamental I.
Yeah, it's the idea that we're caught in a whole bunch of patterning. So look, here's the good news. This refractory period, and I love that language, this period wherein we're in reaction, where there's no observer and there's no ability to make choices. It's simply a function of habit, emotional habit, thinking habit, behavior habit, whatever. There is a way, and I know this from your work, of slowing down, of interrupting, and essentially repatterning, so that we aren't in these closed system tape loops of Groundhog Day, of a reoccurring same 90 or 70,000 thoughts and their subsequent behaviors again and again and again, and that's where I want to head.
Okay, well, let's chat about that, because everybody secretly believes in possibility, and what makes the new science so unique is that we're not hardwired to be a certain way for the rest of our life. And we're not doomed by our genes. We're marvels of adaptability, and we're marvels of change. And the real question is, what does it mean to change? To change is to be greater than the conditions in your environment. In other words, your brain is organized to reflect everything you know in your life. So if you wake up in the morning and you get out of bed on the same side and you wash yourself in the shower the same way, you groom yourself to look like everybody expects you to look, you drive to work the same way, you do the same things, you see the same people that push the same emotional buttons, you hurry up and go home and check your emails, you hurry up and eat, you hurry up and go to bed, and you do it all over again, we could say that your brain never changed at all that day. You were thinking the same thoughts, performing the same actions, living by the same emotions, but secretly expecting something unusual to happen in your life. So as you go to the same place and you see the same people and you do the same thing at the exact same time, it's the external environment that's turning on different circuits in your brain, causing you to think equal to everything that you know. And as long as you're thinking equal to everything that you know, then it makes sense you're going to keep creating more of the same. Now, every great person in history that ever changed destiny understood this, whether it was William Wallace or Mahatma Gandhi or Martin Luther King or Joan of Arc, Queen Elizabeth I, they all had a vision, an idea, a dream. It was bigger than them. They couldn't see it, they couldn't smell it, they couldn't taste it, they couldn't feel it. It was beyond their senses. But they were so impassioned by that vision that they began to live as if that future reality was happening in the present moment. So can we believe in a future that we can't see or experience with our senses yet, but we've thought about enough times in our mind that our brain is literally changed to look like the event has already happened? Neuroscience says it's absolutely possible. Why? Because we can make thought more real than anything else. That's the privilege of being a human being. And can we emotionally embrace a future potential that exists as a possibility in the quantum field and begin to fall in love with that experience to such a degree that we begin to emotionally convince the body that the future event has already happened, and we begin to signal new genes in new ways, so the body begins to change to look like the event has happened. The epigenetic model of reality says it's possible. Now, when your brain and body are physically changed to look like the event has happened, hang on, because the event is going to find you. And it's going to come in a way that you least expect. And it has to come in a way that we least expect, because if we can expect it, it's nothing new. It has to surprise us. It has to catch us off guard. It has to leave no doubt that what we did inside of us produced some results outside of us. Now, that's the moment we begin to feel empowered. That's the moment we begin to go quantum. And that's the moment we begin to see evidence of our efforts.
Wow. One of the many pleasures of listening to you is that you manage to marry the metaphysics with science in a way that grounds it, that takes
absolutely
that takes all the airiness out of it. There's a place for airiness because there's so many in the scientific community that could use a little air.
I'm in constant debate with those guys, by the way.
Oh, yeah. So, but on the other side, there are so many in the metaphysical community, in
who need a little grounding,
who could use some grounding.
Yeah.
We are physical, as well as the more of it. But I am curious to ask you. There are so many wonderful scientific speculations. There is a fellow named Everett who came up with the many worlds theory. I'm sure you're very well familiar with it. And I would love to have a sense from you of how you see these as being interrelated.
Another 2 bottles of wine in 3 hours.
Done.
I mean, this is
it's getting to be a pricey dinner, but we're in.
Done. I'm even getting dessert on the menu.
I knew I'd get it. No, but I mean, think about it. Science is the contemporary language of mysticism. I mean, this is
That's a great line. Oh, that's fantastic. Science is the contemporary language of mysticism. Keep going, Joe. You're on fire.
Listen, I mean, the moment we start talking about culture or tradition or religion, what happens to the community of people that we're speaking to? We begin to separate them. But science has become the language to unify individuals because it's based on truth. It's based on facts, or at least present levels of understanding, ultimately reaching to greater understanding. So look, if you take a little quantum physics, a little neuroscience, a little neuroendocrinology, a little genetics.
Sound like my mother. A little bit of fish, a little bit of pepper.
We're baking something delicious. Go on.
We are talking about you.
Yeah.
Because this is really when we are at our best. When we are at our best is when we are trusting in outcomes, when we're all in, when we're waking up in the morning because we have a vision that's bigger than us and we're inspired to make a difference, and we're all the best when we're contributing. So what gives us permission to do that? Quantum physics is the science of the miraculous. It's the science of creativity. If there are many worlds coexisting right now, simultaneously, then it begs the question, if the atom is 99.999999% nothing, it's empty space, it's immaterial, and 0.0000001% particle, matter, and that matter is only existing as a momentary phenomenon, then if everything is made up of atoms, then you as the quantum observer, you're the observer. Subjective mind has an effect on the objective world in the subatomic world. In other words, when they begin to measure an electron, the moment they begin to look for an electron, that wave of energy collapses into a particle, and that's called a quantum event, or collapsing the wave function. You turn your back on those atoms, and they move back into fuzzy waves. So if you're observing your life from the same level of mind every single day, then you're collapsing infinite possibilities into the same patterns called your reality. When you begin to take your attention off the sensual or the sensory-based reality and begin to construct a dream or a hologram or a vision in your brain, now your brain and body are no longer a record of the past. Now they're, in fact, a map to the future, and you're beginning to focus on possibility. And when you're beginning to hold that vision, you're actually causing waves of possibility to collapse into patterns called an event or an experience in your life. Now, that takes practice, that takes instruction, and it takes a certain degree of skill. And to make that shift requires a whole reconstruction of the way we view the world. Now, some people will consider that foolhardy or insane. Other people would see it as the real change that we're looking for in the world right now.
Wow. And we're going back to Barnet's.
Diplomas will be handed out at the end of the show.
That's right. There'll be a quiz.
For everybody that's listening, if you show up at the station outside, you will get your master's.
That's right. But the point that Barnet was making about the C, that the frequency, that in very real terms, we're generating a frequency. And the term that you used, Joe, at the very beginning when you talked about incoherence versus coherence, that the events and circumstances are going to align with the frequency, as it were, that we're creating or generating. The trick is to be the creator of the frequency versus defaulting
versus the reactor.
Right. Well, versus to that guy who keeps hitting the C.
Yeah, what I'm hearing from you, Joe, is you're either the dreamer or you're being dreamed.
Right. Is the environment controlling your thinking, or is your thinking controlling your environment? That's the question.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's really great. It's a great concept. But listen, if you believe in that principle of vibration, we know that thoughts have are the electrical charge in the quantum field, and feelings are the magnetic charge in the quantum field, and how you think and how you feel broadcasts an electromagnetic signature that influences every single atom in your life. Now, if you can't sustain that change and sustain that level of energy, then by very definition, the environment is beginning to influence how you think and feel, and you return back to the same state of being, the same energy. So then, wouldn't it be a good idea when we wake up in the morning every day to begin to remind ourselves of those unconscious thoughts that undermine our future? Begin to notice our behaviors that really keep us the same person, and begin to become aware of our emotions, and then begin to say, what do I do want to remind myself of who I want to be?
And in essence, train our attention. Train our attention towards that which we want to create and generate. And to the degree we train our attention, then what you're saying is everything else will follow.
All new worlds.
Where you place your attention is where you place your energy. That's
right.
the bottom line.
And it expands. It expands to the degree that we're able to hold it. And now we come back to maybe the very first point, which is is the capacity issue. Is that, many of us top out at a certain point. We can only hold it to a certain degree because our world as we've created it may or may not support it. The people around us don't know what to do with it, and so forth and so on. So does this at this point bump up against the capacity issue?
Well, it does, but remember, we said when we started this conversation that the body is the servant to the mind.
Right.
If we condition the body to be the mind, the servants become the master. And now making that switch requires then getting into the operating system where those programs exist. Otherwise, it's just good dinner conversation.
Right.
You have to literally go in there, remove the environment, close your eyes, remove the stimulation from the external world, retreat from your familiar life. Close, everything off. Play soft music in the background. Put earplugs in. Whatever you do, limit the amount of sensory input now and begin to go inward and begin to become conscious of who you do want to be and say to yourself, I'm going to train this body. I'm going to teach this body emotionally what it feels like to be a genius. What would genius feel like? I'm going to teach my body what it feels like to be abundant. What would that feel like? And as you begin to chemically instruct your body, you are literally, just like an animal, training it into a new state of being. Now, if you practice that every day and you said, I'm not going to get up from my inward process or my meditation until I am this person, now we're talking about greatness, because right on the other side of a person's fear is courage. It's the same energy. It's just trapped in the body. And we can transmute, pain into joy. All we have to do is be willing to sit and allow the body to begin to surrender into the present moment. And that liberation of energy is called joy, because the body is no longer constrained to the addiction of those emotions that keep the body attached to the past. And that's the moment where we literally trust in a new future.
Whoa, that is gorgeous. So what comes up for me as you're saying that, and we have a reference, we have a relationship with physical bodies, and our reference instantly goes to what Alan Watts used to call the skin part of the skin-encapsulated ego, the skin sac. But as you're speaking, I realize that the body is equally the world. It is equally all matter.
The body is coherent, trapped light. It's all organized energy into patterns.
Mm. And so, by extension, so is the sidewalk outside the building, and the glass on the screen of the board opposites. It is also trapped light and responsive to the same repatterning.
Mm-hmm. So this is a great conversation, because when you and I are living in reaction to the environment, we live in one of two states of mind. We either live in survival or we live in creation. And living in survival is living in stress. And stress is when your body's knocked out of homeostasis, when it's knocked out of balance. Stress response is what the body naturally does to return itself back to order. If you keep turning on that stress response and you can't turn it off, you're headed for disease, and you are literally becoming the observer who's defining reality through his senses. In other words, you are looking at the particle instead of the wave of possibility. Because if you're being chased by a lion, it's not a time to create. It's not a time for growth. It's emergency time. And you're going to take care of your body. You're going to look in your environment of where you're going to go, and you're going to obsess about time. When we live by the hormones of stress, we put all of our attention on our bodies, all of our attention on our problems and things in our environment, and all of our attention on time, and we become enslaved to this reality. Creation is when you forget about yourself, when you become nobody, no thing, no time. When you lose track of time and space, you just walk through the door to the quantum field, and we have all the biological and neurological machinery to do that. When we begin to make that a skill, we begin to see the fruits of our efforts.
And what a skill to develop. Unbelievable. Joe, I am so grateful you took the time to join us, and our audience, I'm sure, is...
We collapsed time and space. Don't we have another 30 minutes?
No, I'm sorry. We did. We went to where we lost track of time. But I am the timekeeper, and we, unfortunately, have to say goodbye. Thank you again for joining us. And listen, we really do look forward to hanging with you and having you back.
We will be in touch with you. I will be out for the wine this afternoon.
Okay, I'm in.
Thanks so much. And for those of you listening, stay tuned. We'll be right back after these messages.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
When we are back on Cutting Edge Consciousness, this is Barnet.
Caught you by surprise right then.
You totally
Hey, we're
caught.
back.
Let me wake up. You know, I'm on another planet.
I'm totally on
I've
another
actually during the break, I was dying to the past, and you brought me back into an entirely different experience.
Wow,
and
Joe
Dispenza.
Dispenza.
It took me a moment to bring in all the parts of myself that I want here.
Yeah, no kidding. Dr. Joe Dispenza. The book is
That
called...
is a mind blower.
Unbelievable. His newest book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, How to Lose Your Mind and Create a New One, by Dr. Joe Dispenza. We recommend that highly.
You can get that on Amazon. You know, it took all of 4 days for that book to go to best-selling list on Amazon.
Yeah.
All of 4 days.
Yeah.
So it is pretty wonderful.
Yeah. No, listen, that conversation, I mean, one of the things that is mind-boggling, we both have marveled at this just listening to Joe or seeing him in the past, is how quick that guy can flit between neuroscience and quantum physics and all kinds of other...
That's what happens when we stop flitting from default emotion to default emotion.
That's it.
We flit to a more disciplined relationship
Well,
with
what
our
I was going to say
intentions.
is everything becomes available. I mean, you know, we both have creative outlets, and you know when you're in the zone that everything is available to you. Stuff you didn't even know you could do, you're doing, and effortlessly. And so again, this is obviously his practice. He's clearly trained his attention, as it were, to be able to...
It's dazzling.
It's dazzling. Yeah,
You know, but
go ahead.
In addition to the dazzling, he was talking about mood
Yes.
and temperament. One of the gifts of mood, when it's an empowered relationship with mood, when it's a disempowered, when we have our disempowered relationships with mood, when we are not aware of the thoughts and the emotions that we default to, we can become energy vampires. You know, we all know there's people that it is unpleasant to walk around. Remember the Peanuts character who was always walking under a cloud.
Right.
On the other hand, when we start to integrate these things, and Joe is an amazing example of it, even on the radio,
Yeah.
there is a mood. It's like a rising tide that lifts all boats. There's an energetic frequency. It's a very literal...
It's an offer.
It's a literal shift of energetic octaves. It's like moving up the tone scale on a piano. And although the language sounds the same and the words sound the same, the vessel, the energetic container that it's delivered in is non-local. And we feel kind of the magic of it here. There's a sort of an enchantment that I can't think of a better word. There's a kind of a soupy, delicious quality of being downloaded, of as you say, of an offer that's generous and so on.
Yeah, no, I'm
checking your notes. What do you see there?
Well, I was trying to figure out what he said about the offer of quantum physics, that you know, the move into the new science.
The science of the miraculous.
The science of the miraculous. That's what I was trying to find the language for.
It is discontinuous.
Yes.
He said that, you know, as you put your attention on something, it precipitates as a quantum event. It drops from the nowhere into the now here. And you turn your back on it, and it's gone. So that, folks, puts there's the solution to trees falling in the forest. We've solved that one.
Yeah.
Not only does it not make a sound, there's no forest.
There's no forest. It's all you. Which, you know, at first feels overwhelming and then becomes quite liberating. What I loved about what he was talking about as well is the idea of vis-a-vis your attention, training your body at the feeling level right? At this sensory sensation level, that you go into this kind of relationship with my body. You and I both did Scott Cody's work and love the idea that I'm building a body that can carry me to my vision. I start with this vision, which is similar to what Joe was talking about. You have all the great. They're visionaries. All these people have done things that were outside of the box, to use that analogy.
Off the reservation,
had some sense of something.
Some possibility that they were moving towards in the face of absolutely no signs of support or agreement, no nodding heads, simply driving forward in alignment with some kind of internal compass heading.
And they were able to generate at the feeling level what it would feel like, right?
This is something that you're pointing to. You say they're able to generate at the feeling level.
Yeah.
But the operative term here is generate. He was saying that it's these feelings, these thoughts and feelings themselves that are generative, that are causal.
So what we're talking about then,
you precipitate into, that's the quantum event.
Yeah, well, that's the
writ large enough for us to see it as not as subatomic particles, but as a brick and then a building and then a world.
And then there's a level of marveling at what shows up.
Celebrating
but marveling,
wonder and awe.
I've heard Joe speak before, and he said this, again, maybe not in this conversation, but there's always this way that we're a little surprised, even though we have a sense of what we're doing in generating this experience vis-a-vis how we train our attention and how we do it at the feeling level so our body goes along. But there's always this element of, again, the miraculous sort of takes our breath away. We were talking about that in the last show. So funny, too. Do you notice?
There's a pattern to these shows.
Totally a pattern. And
we pull back far enough, it's almost like a radio mandala.
Yeah.
There's a definite design to these shows.
Yeah, and I think our audience, too, there's a definite design, interestingly enough, because there's these threads of who we're drawing in, who's coming in, and the conversations that are going on in social media, and how there's a bend and a weave that are folks who are attuned to the frequency of what we're focused on, right?
Frequently.
Yeah, frequently.
We're frequently focused on.
Come with us. And so it's interesting how, the folks that show up are the folks who are here because this is the frequency they're on. So
this is where they tune. This is where you tune to.
And the work, I don't know if the word is work, but the leap, maybe it's a leap of faith. There's an element of trust involved for sure, is to begin to know that this is the way it works, that it is so, that's something you and I recently spoke.
It's a felt sense. It's
Yeah.
the body that knows first, because the body is firing on more cylinders than the thinking brain. The body is as we said earlier, a map of your subconscious. So it has a larger sense of awareness. So we hear talk about gut instincts and following your gut, and that's very, very real. The logic and linear part of us wants to shoehorn everything into something that we can put a boundary on, we can control it, we can slice it, we can dice it, we can look at it this way, we can look at it that way, which means that it is smaller than us. But in the quantum model, certainly listening to Joe, it becomes very clear that we are moving eyes open, dreaming eyes wide open in some kind of this event, this synchronistic, mysterious, miraculous quantum event that we are learning how to become relational to and co-creative with. And it is a wonder, and it is beyond all knowing, certainly beyond our capacity to make small in terms of logic and reason. So it's greater than logic and reason without losing sight of logic. We don't toss that away. We still have to drive our cars to work. We still have to be able to cook dinner without burning the house down. So there's a place for logic.
Yeah, but it's where the place is and how much it's a focus. So I want to run through something we've talked about many times. The old model is that your present is a result of the past. The new model is your present is a result of your vision of the future set against the backdrop of the past. To the degree you can hold that vision, your past comes along, but clearly the vision is what's directing what's showing up.
So
your ability to...
The future creates the present against the backdrop of your past.
That's right. So what I like about what Joe did is he viewed the old model through neurology, through the neurochemistry and the patterning of these their neural nets and,
we used to do
neural
it through
pathways.
neuroticry. We went from neuroticry to neurology.
That's funny.
And that's a good movement.
That is a good movement. But I like this way of viewing it, that from the perspective of the neurochemistry, the idea that that these neural nets, the neurons that wire together, fire together, and that they're all patterning.
The neural cells.
And in that context, from a patterning perspective, the present is a result of the past. It is just a repeating and repeating and repeating stimuli response. Stimuli response all falls into a very much a default sort of patterning or program. And then the opportunity to see where this new concept, and it is fairly new, the neuroplasticity, that concept as a possibility, 50 years ago, they didn't think that was true.
Speaking of new patternings and new possibilities,
yes,
we are planning to do a new patterning, new possibility event,
right?
Both for ourselves and for as many of our listeners that want to participate with us.
We're calling it a prosperity practice, and basically it's a mastermind, and we're going to be working with much of what we've talked about today in the context of our own work, because you and I have been playing with this stuff for years, but we're getting clearer and clearer how it works for us and how we've been able to generate some pretty incredible things in our lives, and we're willing to share that, and we're also ready to turn up the volume on it. So we're playing with prosperity, and we're playing it with it in terms of practices, where we actually interrupt the patterning, and simultaneously build new patternings, new ways of focusing our attention and generating, training
ourselves, rewiring those neural nets, training the body to become familiar with the energy movement and the emotions that come along with the visions that we're talking about, that we will be sharing and disclosing, and the building of both the vision and the container to hold the vision.
That
so
capacity piece.
The capacity piece is everything. Is everything.
It's huge.
I mean, I know I have for so many years held a vision and topped out because I didn't have what I called the confidence or the competence or the focus. I didn't have. I know now all of those are qualities of holding they're physical qualities of a physical container. They have to do with an embodying of these visions that are heretofore only neurological patterns.
That's it.
When the neurological patterns start to show up as acts and as events and as the synchronicities that play out in our lives, it requires, as we said earlier in the show vis-a-vis the actors, it requires an awareness of what is happening and some tools to allow the body to and the nervous system to accommodate these challenges.
So much to say about that. But if you're a bit curious about this before you commit, we are going to be doing some sort of informational piece where we introduce the process. So just keep tuning in to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Go to the website. There'll be plenty of information about this. And that brings us to the end of another fantastic show.
That was quick. That was really quick. Too fast.
Happens every time. When we're having fun, it's moving fast. We're always having fun. But again, we have such an amazing guest.
We do want to share I think we already did, right? Or was I
We're all
in
set.
another world? Do we share Joe's website?
Let's share his
we
website.
Did. For one more time, for those of you that want to keep track of what Joe is up to, where he's going to be, www.joedispenza.com, or you can go to our website at cuttingedgeconsciousness.com or to our Facebook page. You know where that is. Please come. Please like us.
And we'll have the information there. Thanks for listening, and keep tuning in to Cutting Edge Consciousness.